kind of an impromptu live about Ayesha Curry. I wanted to talk about this mostly because we just had our second year anniversary, and I followed Ayesha Curry for a really long time. I followed her since the days where she was saying, keep your clothes on, and she was this more conservative woman up until now. And obviously, people are up in arms with what Ayesha Curry has to say. And I just want to offer my 2 cents that nobody asked for as well, just coming from a female perspective, a woman's perspective, and I'm the same age as Ayesha Curry, if not a little bit older. Just talk about this from a Christian perspective, as well as, just trying to understand maybe provide some clarity um, based on what I've also been told by plenty of other women. Let me just make sure that my live is functioning properly, and then we'll get started on this fun topic. This is a audio only presentation, so you can go ahead and just start cleaning or doing whatever it is that you want to do because there will be no video on this. So let me just double check and make sure we're all good. You can go ahead and start cleaning or doing whatever it is. Perfect. Let me fix my audio for you guys. Let me see if I can fix the audio, and then we'll get going on this. If I have another microphone, I will see if I can fix this because I know I'm live, but I'm trying to do this in real time and talk about this topic because I think I have a lot of perspective, and I think also that people are willfully misunderstanding Aisha, and I think they've done that for a long time. I Don't get me wrong, I still think that you know, she there are some things she can keep to herself. So let me switch microphones and then we'll get started. Okay, so I hope you guys can hear me better now. Go ahead and leave something in the chat if you can hear me better. So let's talk about first who Ayesha Curry used to be. Ayesha Curry initially was known as this traditional Christian housewife. She famously, would talk about, women's clothing and how they need to keep their clothes on and to dress modestly. And I recently saw a TikTok that I thought was really interesting. The guy said Ayesha Curry is who Nara Smith is, but she was like 8, 10 years too early. And I 100% agree. And I do think that there's some bitterness in her. 100%. I think there's some bitterness in Aisha. And I want to talk about this because one thing that my parents, my mother specifically, has told me is when you have children, they will take up a lot of your life. They will consume quite a bit of your life. And you have to be willing to be selfish in that period. And so it is better to maybe have a couple years of career under your belt, have a couple years of just knowing your skill set under your belt, and then jumping into marriage and children. And the reason is because you kind of have an identity outside of your family. Now, it is healthy to have your identity rooted in Christ first. It's also healthy for women to know who they are outside of being a mother. This actually prevents you from being a smothering, engulfed, narcissistic, unhealthy parent to do that. So many women in my life have told me, hey, it's really important that yes, you want to get married when you're younger, but you also want to make sure that you know your own skill sets and that you have something outside of your marriage and your children that keeps you reminding you who you are outside of a wife and a mother, because you do have a personality outside of a wife and a mother. And Ayesha Curry, bless her heart, came to fame at such a young age and was the greatest basketball player's wife in the world. And that is an immense amount of pressure. And I could tell that she felt the need and the pressure to be perfection, particularly because they held themselves up as this Christian couple and, this sort of conservative, traditional, Bible believing Christian couple. And they were the poster children for the NBA. And so I could see Ayesha Curry for the first 5, 7 years of her wifedom as Steph Curry's wife, really holding on to that identity. And people, would praise her, but they would not monetize her for being conservative. In the same way that Nara Smith right now, you guys, if Ayesha Curry had kept this up, because we are now turning into trad wifeism, right? As a country, we're getting back to that, right? if if Nara Smith, who isn't technically a trad wife, but she has the trad wife aesthetic, if Nara Smith and Ayesha Curry were doing the same thing right now, she would blow up. The problem is that Ayesha Curry tried that for years, as this TikToker said. She tried it for years, and it didn't work. And women hated on her. They told her that she was nasty and judgmental and blah, 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 blah. And granted, Ayesha Curry is not afraid to speak her mind, whereas Nara Smith just acts. She doesn't say what you should and shouldn't do. So that's the difference between Ayesha Curry and Nara Smith, or any, trad wife content. They simply just show you their trad life, and they don't really make commentary on other women. Whereas Ayesha Curry, that's her sort of shtick, right? So anyway, recently Ayesha Curry was on the Call Her Daddy podcast. She's been making the rounds, and she's dabbled into several different projects here and there. She had a restaurant. She has a magazine and sort of this like wellness care line, and so she's doing well, right? She's doing well for herself, but she's not at the fame that she thought. So the most controversial thing that she said so far was like, the lady on Call Her Daddy podcast said, I don't, did you ever want kids? And she said, no, I didn't think, she thought she was going to be the baddie in business, right? And people jumped down her throat. I didn't hear the animosity that everyone else heard. What I heard, because if you listen to the full clip, this woman asks her, did you ever think you were going to have kids? And she was like, no, I did this. I thought I was going to do that. Thought I was going to do this. And it actually turned out to be like wonderful. Like, I'm glad I had those children. Now, did I miss out on some things? Yes, but I'm glad I had those children. And she goes on to talk about how you don't really know what you want at that age. She specifically says, you don't know what you want when you're younger. So for her, if it was up to her, she would have never had children at that age, right? But that turned out to be a beneficial thing for her. She loves her kids. She can't imagine her life without them. And I thought that was the point of the podcast, not the fact that like she never wanted kids, but people picked up on that and just ripped her into shreds. And I think it was such wisdom for her to say, listen, at 18, you don't know what you want. So saying that you never want kids at 18 is kind of foolish, because once you have children like her, you've had this wonderful life. And why would you be upset about that? Now, out of the same corner of her mouth, Ayesha Curry has also talked about the fact that she is not getting the same attention and accolades as Stephen Curry. And I think this is problematic. I think Ayesha Curry wanted to be successful in her own right. And she's watching how her youth, right? Because she spent her youth taking care of her children. She's watching that slip away and wondering, is there going to be anything for me? Who am I? And as I said, you can be mad at her if you want to, but this is actually the way that a lot of married women feel. Now, it's one thing if you want to deny that. It's another thing if you're thinking, hey, you should probably keep this to yourself. I think that Ayesha Curry needs other women around her who she can speak to about this, because Ayesha Curry, I promise you guys, is not the only person who feels like she kind of wasted her time, and she feels like she's like losing it. She's losing that youth, that maybe even attractiveness. She's a mom, and it's like that's her entire identity right now. Like, people just see her as Stephen Curry's wife, and she wants to be somebody else. And I think it's important that people acknowledge that. Let me tell y'all a little secret that people don't want to talk about. A lot of pastors' wives feel the same way. And they won't say it publicly, but a lot of pastors' wives feel the same way. They feel like, I am just the pastor's wife. I'm just the first lady. I'm just that. And I'm stuck in this box when I know that I am more than that. Right? So I'm going to extend some compassion and some grace to Ayesha, because I can understand how you go through this entire life. And yes, people are like, how could you be so ungrateful? And you have millions and millions of dollars and you have the best life in the world and you're married to Stephen Curry. None of us know what it's like to be married to a billionaire, multimillionaire, right? He's gone a lot for basketball. She can't just pull her kids out of school and go watch him play, right? Like, we don't know. And I don't know about, you guys have to understand, when you're married to someone who's a professional athlete, it's not just games. It's also like they eat, breathe, and sleep basketball or football or hockey or baseball. So you really can end up in a marriage where you're getting the leftovers. And I'm not by any means saying that that's what is happening with Stephen Curry, but I think to just assume that he has money and he's the greatest basketball player in the world, that means that they're, have this amazing relationship and that it's everything she's ever wanted, is, I think, a little naive and foolish, because you've probably never been married. Now, in the same token, I think you can get a little bit of envy and idolization whenever you're in any stage of your life. I think a lot of people forget, even I had to remind myself this recently, like, people would die to live where I live, right? We own property, we live in a safe neighborhood. We're safe. We have, security, financial security right now. People would die to be in this position. Does it have its challenges? Absolutely. Absolutely, it has its challenges. But people would die to be in this position. And so, in the same way that I could feel that right now, I could feel a little bit of like, oh, but I wish I had this and I wish I had that, and wouldn't it be great to have that? I can also see how Ayesha Curry, who is just a woman, she's a sinner like you and I, would also feel like, yes, I'm grateful, but like, I feel like something's missing in my life because I don't have like, there's a dream deferred in her. And that is the sacrifice, I think, of mothers. That is the sacrifice of mothers. And to be honest with you guys, this is where a lot of men are going to get upset with me. A lot of men don't want to acknowledge that. They don't want to acknowledge that women sacrifice a lot to become mothers. Now, we know what we're sacrificing oftentimes, but it doesn't mean it wasn't a sacrifice. And Ayesha Curry sacrificed her girl boss dream to be Steph Curry's wife. Now, she made that decision, and she doesn't, she's in that lifestyle. She has some options. Now, girl, you would be foolish to end this for the cesspool that is, dating. And I know they live where I live, kind of. And I'm like, baby, the girl, there ain't nothing outside. I promise you, there's nothing outside. There's nothing outside. So figure out a way to be grateful and thankful for what you have right now and build that dream. Ayesha Curry is missing, she's coming to the stark realization. She's done having children. Her eldest is going to be in high school. Pretty soon, those babies are going to be gone. And who is Ayesha Curry? And she is going through, dare I say it, maybe a third life crisis or a half midlife crisis. She's going through it. And I think we can shame her and blame her and all this other stuff. And yes, there's a lot of things that she needs to keep to herself. But the fact of the matter is, I've watched this, because you guys know I coach women. And I've watched this happen over and over and over again. Now, these women are not famous, but they're successful. And we have conversations weekly, and we watch this. I watch this happen with women all the time. Their kids grow up. They're like, who am I? What am I doing? And what have I done with my life? And you start replaying all of the things that you wanted to do. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that per se. I think that's part of a natural healing process to grieve, because what I think Ayesha Curry right now is grieving is her life that she thought she was going to have. And when you're having children and you're being a wife and you're traveling, sometimes you're so much in the thick of it that you can't remember things. But Ayesha Curry is grieving the fact that she never got to be the baddie work girl that she thought she was going to be. She's grieving it. And a lot of us don't have compassion for that because she's rich. That's really the fact. Because she's rich, we think that she should just simply be grateful. And this is because we think money solves a lot of problems. We think money solves everybody's problems. But it doesn't. It doesn't solve the fact that Ayesha Curry still wanted to do something, that she has a dream that she deferred. And right now she's trying to grasp every little piece of that because she's realizing my life is it's slipping away. And so the compassion that I actually have for her, because I work with women from all different walks of life who have gone through the same process, she was just foolish enough to share it publicly. I would not have done that. I don't think that it's wise to share this publicly in the climate that we're in. People are not ready for honest conversations about marriage, motherhood, sacrifice. They're simply not. And so she is learning that right now. Like, she's learning. I should have kept my mouth shut. But I can tell you right now, hundreds of thousands of women understand what Ayesha is going through. And this is one of the reasons why I'm so thankful, actually, that I'm having my children later in life, because I genuinely have said, I feel like I've done everything I ever wanted to. I had a career. I moved up into administration. I traveled across the world. I've traveled with my husband. I've built a super successful business from scratch. I've done it all. So when I have my children, I will not feel this, who am I? Have I done what I wanted to with my life? But for someone like Ayesha Curry, who did this so young, and you're doing these little pet projects on the side, but they're not your passion. They're not your genuine goal. I can understand the grief that she's feeling. And I just want to be honest about that, because I think a lot of women will not be honest. And again, in the same breath, I can also say these are conversations you need to have with your church group, the women in your church group, to be honest about that. Now, this is where I want to talk about embarrassing your husband. I think y'all are foolish to think that she hasn't talked to Steph about this. I think y'all are absolutely foolish to think that. To think that Steph doesn't know what Ayesha is about to say on a podcast is foolish. They are the face of the NBA. I know that people think LeBron and Savannah are, but even so, Steph and Ayesha are number two. Okay? These things are not by accident, you guys. They're not by mistake. When you're put into this position, you have PR people. You don't think that they don't know, you don't think they don't know what Ayesha's saying on these podcasts? You don't think they have talking points that she's already talked this out with Steph? Are you kidding me? The other thing is like, because people are twisting her words, you guys think that he's embarrassed, but he knows his wife. He knows his wife. Now, here's where I will say she's out of pocket, okay? She talking about, I want men to look at me and blah 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 blah. That may be an honest conversation. That may be an honest point. That can stay at home. That can stay in your therapist's office. Putting that out there is a little strange to me. And I will say this. When she was on Call Her Daddy, she did say something like, oh, I never really thought about Steph. I never really looked at him, blah, 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 blah. We've had this conversation thousands of times, guys. We've had this conversation thousands of times. Why do you need to keep saying that you weren't attracted to him? If you're going to tell the truth and say, I really wasn't attracted to him initially, then say, but he turned out to be the best decision that I've ever made, and I cannot imagine myself with anybody else. Why do you just leave it at, well, no, I wasn't really checking for him like that. I didn't really want to get married. Like, you hit the jackpot with, in terms of financial security, you hit the jackpot with Steph. And from from the looks of it, also in integrity and morality. Now, I don't know what goes on behind closed doors. I can't imagine how stressed out that man is. He may have a temper with her because that's the only person he can have a temper with, because of, the pressures of being the face of the NBA. So I'm not even going to pretend like I know what's going on in their marriage. But that right there, you could keep to yourself. And I do think that it's important that the longer I'm married, the more you represent us. And I can't imagine being comfortable to say, to some people in front of millions of people, that I wish that more men were attracted to me and that I wish that men were looking at me. Now, I can understand how she could feel jealous. And this is why I go back to We don't know what life is like. I have no idea what it's like to have women knocking down my husband's doors to have sex with him just so they can get pregnant, just so they can have a baby with a millionaire. I don't know what that's like. And so, in the same breath that I'm saying she needs to keep her mouth shut about that, I have to also acknowledge that I don't know what that's like. I don't know what kind of fool I would act if every single day there are women clamoring, pushing you out of the way, stepping in front of you, treating you like trash to try and get to your husband. I don't know what that's like, and neither do you. Does it make it right? No, it does not make it right. But it's an important note. This is called wisdom, where I'm not just making blanket statements like she needs to be doing this. Baby, I don't know what that's like. I don't know what kind of plum fool I would act like if that was my life. And I don't know what kind of outlet I would need if that were my life, which is why I keep saying she needs to go talk to a therapist about this. She needs to have more NBA wives, friends, people who have been through the same thing that she's been through. Because she needs to be talking to people who understand what she's talking about, not the girl on Call Her Daddy podcast. That girl doesn't know nothing about being a parent, doesn't know anything about having children. That girl knows nothing about sacrifice, the sacrifice that it takes to be a wife and a mother. I am telling you guys right now, it is a sacrifice. It is a submission. It is a submission to motherhood. You actually have to put down parts of yourself, not all of yourself, but parts of yourself to be a wife and a mother. And particularly at a young age, all you know is that. So you've engulfed yourself in that personality. You've engulfed yourself in who that is. And none of us know what that's like. None of us. So we're out here judging Ayesha Curry for feeling what the majority of women are feeling. Now, we can agree or disagree that that is of the devil and that that needs to be squashed out. Regardless, a lot of women feel that way. Most women are just not sharing that with the world because they know how women will respond. They know how women will respond. We're mean. We're vicious. Because we haven't had that experience yet, we don't know what that's like. So we'll mock her and laugh at her and call her crazy. But you just wait until you get in that position. And you don't know how you're going to behave when everybody is, when you're feeling like a nobody and your dream was to be a somebody. She gave up on her dream. And that's why marriage is so hard for some women and motherhood is so hard for some women. I don't think there's anything wrong with actually saying that. Right, wrong, or indifferent. I don't think there's anything wrong with saying that. I think there's a humility and a humbling that happens when you become a parent and a wife. And it sounds like Ayesha's struggling with that. And so to me, I'm just going to pray for her and pray that she finds purpose and meaning and value in what she's doing right now. And that she finds fulfillment in whatever way she was supposed to find fulfillment now. Because like I said earlier, that dream is slipping away, right? That dream of her being a corporate baddie or whatever she thought she was going to do, that dream's slipping away. You're watching it fall away as you watch your fourth child not need you anymore. And then you realize, wow, I missed out on quote unquote my hoe phase, which I hate that phrase. I think it's so vile. Watching that slip away. I'm going to finish it by saying this. Ayesha Curry was protected though, and I don't think she realizes that. She was protected. There is a protection in what happened with Ayesha and Steph is when they were married, their parents, both parents, covered them very well. They sheltered them from a lot of hot foolery. A lot. Now, Ayesha still had a slick tongue, but their parents protected them from making stupid, impulsive decisions that you make at 21, 22, 23, 24. And I don't think Ayesha realizes that. That God actually protected her and Steph from being foolish. right? Who knows where she would have been if she had just kind of gone her own way. And sometimes we have to look at things with a different lens and go, yeah, I was being protected. Like the Lord was protecting me when he allowed me to get married so young and to have children so young, so that now when I'm older, I'm not making such impulsive decisions. I'm making wise decisions. Now, even though I want to go out and act a fool a little bit, I have a prefrontal cortex that will help me to make better decisions versus at 21, 22, 19, I'm just making foolish decisions. And I think we would all do well to like remember that this is a process for everybody. And some of you guys had your children super young and your mama watched your baby. So you went out and you partied and you went to the club with your friends and you had your fun. And now you're like, man, I want a millionaire. And you're like, how could she be so upset? That girl was locked down. She was locked down at 18 and is probably trying to figure out who she is. I have people that I know very well who have a very similar story to Ayesha, and they're feeling the same way. So I have compassion for that. And in the same mouth, in the same breath, I can say Ayesha was protected and she should be thankful for that. She should be grateful for that. That she was protected from herself at that young age, even though she had to sacrifice her career and her job and her, her money and her independence to be a wife. She was protected in a beautiful way by Steph's parents and by her parents. And so, yeah, I have a lot of compassion for her. And I think she's still learning, you know, when you're bound by, when you're younger, right? They were young in the NBA. They had a lot of parameters around them, right? And now you get grown, and you're like, ain't nobody tell me what to do or say. And she's still navigating that life. She's still navigating that. And so I think it's going to take her a couple years to find her voice again. You can see her acting out a little bit. It's whatever, she's acting out a little bit. You can just see it. But this is what happens sometimes when you're trying to find out who you are. So anyway, that's it for tonight's video. Just a random little chat on Ayesha Curry. Yeah, I'm working on in my life just not being too harsh with people if I've never been in their shoes, because you simply just don't know. We really don't know. So anyway, you guys, don't forget to like this video on your way out, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.